You are listening to Fighting Together. We are fighting to make a positive impact in our God-hungry communities.
A few days ago, I think it was 2 days ago, someone on my Facebook timeline shared an image. It was an image of elephants, and they were crossing a river. So there was two elephants. There was like the mother elephant. I presume it was the mother elephant. I'm not sure. I didn't check. But there was what appeared to be the mother elephant, and it was being followed by a baby elephant. Now, both of them are in the water, and they're crossing the river. So the water is like up to the mother's belly, you know. It's that deep. But for the baby, on the other hand, the baby being smaller, being a much, much smaller elephant, the water was over its head, so the baby needed to lift its trunk. The baby needed to have its trunk way up there, so that the trunk can kind of, I guess, bring some oxygen. A bit like a scuba diver. Or is that not how scuba diving works? I've never been. Yeah, and these two elephants are both crossing the same river, you know. And it's a bit like COVID, in that COVID, in as much as it's the same virus, it's all over, it's affecting all of us, how we are surviving or how we are handling it is very different because of economic reasons, because of personal reasons, because of different reasons. Some of us are mother elephants, some of us are baby elephants, and I hope there are no crocodiles within this pandemic who are busy waiting to kind of bite us. Yeah, but either way, we're all in the same river, but our trunks and our bodies and our bellies are on different levels. So if you're one of those baby elephants that feels like you're a bit overwhelmed, or you're going through a lot and you feel all alone, my hope is that this podcast can give you some kind of refuge. My name is Tafadzwa. Welcome to yet another episode of my podcast, Inonzi, Fighting Together, as we fight to cross that river together.
This podcast was made possible through an independent crowdfunding campaign. Visit www.dailypodcast.show if you want more episodes.
These days, the internet is filled with toxic content, politics, and depressing news. If you want a bit of refuge from all that chaos, then visit www.dailypodcast.show, where we give you hope, hymns, and something different.
I hope you are having a lovely day. If not, I pray that you'll be able to take something out of today's podcast, something that will brighten your day, something that will bring you closer to God. I have a lot of things I want to touch on, and I'm going to start off with a story. If you're one of those people who has never left the country, or if you're someone who has traveled to another foreign country before, you probably have experiences, things you went through. In this particular segment, I'm going to tell you about an experience that I went through personally, something that I went through, a point in time where I wish I had faith. Have you ever had a moment when you look back and you say to yourself, man, I just wish I had a little bit more faith in this moment, so that the story would be more triumphant. Unfortunately, this is a partially triumphant story, because triumphant. I shouldn't use these words. Unfortunately, this story is not as triumphant as it's meant to be, simply because I lacked faith. Anyway, before we go into that story, I want to reintroduce you to a group of singers. These voices are voices of people who are members of the Church of Christ here in Zimbabwe. They are from different congregations, but every now and again, they come together, you know, kind of like when we were kids. Remember that cartoon? I think it was an 80s cartoon, but some of us got to see it in the 90s. It was a show where different kind of characters would come together and form Voltron. There were different versions of Voltron. Some of them were like a lion-based Voltron. Some of them were like a space-based Voltron, sure, I don't know. So different members from different congregations of Church of Christ within Zimbabwe occasionally come together and form Voltron. So the group they form is not called Voltron, no, it's called Mzambangwena, and it's a collective of different members from different congregations who are talented. They can sing really well. I am just going to sample this song so that you know about them, because it always aches my heart that people are not aware of such a talented group.
If you are enjoying this podcast, then I think you are going to love our website. Visit www.dailypodcast.show.
You have had a sample of what these guys can do, you know. What they were essentially saying, for those that don't understand Shona, in that song, they were crying out to God, saying, Heavenly Father, we are calling upon you. We know we sin, we know we fall, we stumble, but please do not turn away from us. We are calling upon you in this moment. We need you now in the moment that we are in. I think I did a decent-ish job translating that. It's never easy to translate a song, you know. And I sampled that little track so that you can look for them. The group is called Mzambangwena Choral Group. If you have a problem finding them, just let me know in the comments below and I'll kind of just answer you with the link. Mzambangwena Choral Group. After the break, I have more content coming. I hope all this content is filling a hole inside of you that no other content was able to fill. I don't know, maybe. Fighting Together is the name of the podcast. My name is Tafadzwa. Stick around.
Are you tired of consuming the same old content? Bored by the lack of variety? Stick around. Maybe this podcast will help.
I thought I should just take a moment to let you know that the upcoming story is going to be 25 minutes long, and I'm quite excited. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. I hope you enjoyed that little thing I had in the beginning about the elephant and the baby elephant. And I mean, if we head up together as a bunch of baby elephants, I'm sure we can lift our trunks and make it across whatever river you might be going through in your life. Stick around. There's so much more that's coming in addition to that story that's coming after the break. My name is Tafadzwa and you are listening to Fighting Together.
This podcast was made possible through your donations, prayers, love, and continued support.
You are listening to Fighting Together. We are fighting to make a positive impact in our God-hungry communities.
Right. You've waited long enough. I'm about to get into the story. Before I get into the story, I want to touch a little bit on, because this is a story about being a foreigner, because this is a story about being on a bus that was coming from South Africa to Zimbabwe, I thought, what kind of a Bible verse can I throw in here? A verse that talks about foreigners. And then I immediately jumped to Leviticus chapter 23. The chapter in itself talks a lot about things like festival of the unleavened bread, festival of like the first fruits, and festival of weeks, and festival of the trumpets, and so on. And it's like a very festive Bible chapter. Yeah. So in Leviticus chapter 23, I should talk slower. Yeah, in Leviticus chapter 23, the thing you find in there is on verse 22. It says something which was, there's a moment when a Bible verse just cuts through you, it just pierces you. Like if you're a widow and then you read a Bible verse that has a widow in it, it can hit you differently if you are an orphan and you read a Bible verse that's got an orphan in it. Or if you are someone who's in prison, I don't know where you are, like a maximum prison somewhere, and you happen to have some old Bible which has got some torn pages, and in the few pages you have, if you happen to bump into a Bible verse about those in prison, it can touch you differently from those that are not in prison. Though in some cases, the prison in which the Bible refers to could be a prison of sin, and so on and so on. But I don't want to get into that. Anyway, let's talk about Leviticus chapter 23. Not rather talk about, but read quickly, and then I'll get into the story. It says, verse 22, "When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Leave them for the poor." Now, they're saying, when you're harvesting and you're reaping the harvest, leave the edges of your field unharvested. Let me go through that again. Leave them for the poor and for the foreigner residing among you. I am the Lord your God. And that's the end of the verse. Obviously, I always encourage people to dig into context, and I always encourage people to go through the entire chapter. So check it out, because Leviticus has got a lot of stuff in there. Part of it is part of the old law, and so on and so on. But it's so touching. It was so touching, the heartache I felt when I first bumped into this Bible verse where they were saying, leave a little something for the foreigner. The children of Israel were being told, leave a little something. Don't go about harvesting the entirety of your crop. Leave those items that are at the edge of your field for those who are less fortunate than you. Not necessarily to say that every foreigner is going to be less fortunate than you, but it tends to, be a common trait that when someone is wealthy and everything is good, they tend to not want to leave their country. I mean, why on earth would they leave America? Or why on earth would they leave New Zealand? They could leave to go on holiday, or a honeymoon, or a safari drive, but they tend to go back quickly. Foreigner, even though it's not specific, tends to be a word that's massively associated with those that have fled and had no choice in some cases. Not to say that's the true definition of the word, but it tends to, Yeah, you can still use foreigner for the people who are sitting on a 4-wheel drive car at the back while with their binoculars and they're like looking at zebras and lions and stuff. They are foreigners too. Yeah, they are. Granted, yes. I mean, they are foreigners for the 2 weeks that they're on honeymoon, I guess. Yeah. But you also get a group that's away from their home for years on end. And I was part of that group that was years and years away from home, though I was visiting every now and again. And this story should now begin with me having introduced that I was away from home for quite some time. I would come back after some months and go back and come back. But the time I spent away from Zimbabwe was longer than the time I spent in Zimbabwe. Right, and our story isn't about that. It's about one specific bus ride. I don't know if you have ever looked at the buses, those big buses that pass by, those cross-border buses, and wondered, What's going on in there? Maybe as someone who's never been on one of those buses, you just see them driving past, or you probably don't even notice that the bus is heading to another country because you assume it's just going round the corner. But believe me, they're there in your community. Well, maybe not all cities, but in a lot of places, there's always one or two buses. Maybe not now because of COVID, but there's always a bus amongst that traffic jam or wherever that's not destined to just go around the corner, a bus that's heading to another country. And I've been on those buses a lot of times. One particular ride was I was sitting there on the bus. I am tired. I had to run, and I was a student, so money was tight. I got the cheapest bus at the cheapest traveling time, because they have travel times to say, do you want to leave in the morning? Do you want to leave midday? And each time slot, depending on how favorable or comfortable it is, has a different price point. And not just that, but you get a lot of buses. Some buses have reclining chairs. Some buses are all cooked up, and you will feel every bump and hump in the road. You get different kinds of buses. So me being a student, I was on the cheapest bus I could afford, on the cheapest time slot, and I had to find the cheapest way to go to the bus station, which meant I wasn't comfortably driven there by a taxi, which then dropped me right at the mouth of the bus, if you want to call it that. No, I was dropped far from the bus station. I had to carry my luggage and run with it. These are heavy bags, because I'm not going on some honeymoon with a handbag and a bikini or something. I've got heavy bags of all my clothes, because I have nowhere to leave my stuff in the country. When I come back, I have to come back with all the stuff again. So I'm just doing that, running. I make it on time. I'm on the bus. Thank God, And while I'm sitting there, I now realize, it's hot. And I regretted. It was so hot that I regretted that. I wish I'd brought some water with me. But, like I said, I was on a tight budget. I had cleaned out my bank. Sometimes when you are using certain facilities like banks and whatever, sometimes people don't get to experience how much money can you take out of your account. If life is moderately okay, I won't say if you're rich, if life is moderately okay for you, you probably have $5 that just sits there in your account, or $10 or $100 or maybe $1,000, or I don't know, whatever amount of money you have that you kind of don't ever really go below, not because you're forced to, but simply because you never have had to, But for me, in this particular incident, I had milked every single cent I could get out of my account just to buy this ticket, And now I had money on me to buy my next ticket, because the distance I was covering was so long that I couldn't make it with one bus. So I had a first bus which would drop me off in Johannesburg, which is the center of South Africa. It's centralish. I don't know. Yeah. And after Johannesburg, I needed to then use the money I had on me to buy, once again, the cheapest connecting bus that would then take me to Zimbabwe. And in this entire transaction, there was not a single cent. And I kid you not, I'm not using it as a figure of speech, when people say, I didn't have a single cent on me. I should practice accents. I am not good with them. Anyway, so there wasn't a single cent to spare. The exact money I had was the exact money that was needed, not on any bus, but on the cheapest bus. So if the cheapest bus was to be full, I wasn't going to be able to afford the second cheapest bus. I would have been stranded. So now I'm in this situation where I'm sitting in the bus, it's hot, and I'd forgotten to bring with me a bottle of water from the kitchen. Tap water, free water, And I'm sitting there and the bus is about to go, and I'm it's hot. It's going to be a hot ride. I won't be able to afford anything. I can't buy anything. I just have to, like, I don't know, breathe in a manner that allows me to cool down. I don't know. Yeah, and it was going to be a long ride, a ride that would pretty much be all night, and there were going to be a lot of stops. And during the stops, there would be people buying food because, I mean, that's what you do in a long distance bus. But me, I wasn't going to be one of those people. So I'm sitting there and just contemplating about what's about to happen because I forgot to bring some tap water with me. Then the lady next to me said something. She was just, I don't know. She looked like she was about to pass out. She looked like she might have been pregnant. She looked like I was having a bad day, but she was just, I don't know. Something was about to happen with her, And then she says to me, dude, well, not dude, it was in Zulu. I do not speak Zulu, but because I'd been in South Africa for a while, I could kind of hear what's being said. And then I would reply the person in English. But then they would think that I'm this, I don't know, person who doesn't like speaking his own language. Because they assume that because I have the same amount of melanin in my skin as they do, they assume that I'm also of the same tribe, because in Africa you get a lot of tribes, you get a lot of people. We're all African people, we all have more or less the same complexion, but our languages are vastly different, like super different. Like I can't even pick two random languages to try and point out how different our languages are. And to a foreigner who is from off the continent, you might think, they're not that different. No, they are vastly different. But for me, luckily, I could kind of get some of the stuff, and not because it was close to my language. No, simply because I'd been there for years. And through those years, I then caught a word or two. So from what she said, I got the gist of it and understood that she was asking me to buy her some water. And there was a guy who was passing by in the bus. Before the bus takes off, you get these vendors who come on board and they have like a box of chocolates or sweets or water or any last minute items, like earphones, so that you can like play some music or whatever, that you might not have on you, any item, any random item. In Zimbabwe, sometimes they sell Bibles or whatever, and I'm sitting there and she's like, can you buy me some water? And then the guy hears this and he's like, oh, good customer. So he stops because for him, the moment he hears any slight possibility of someone who might or might not buy, they stop. So he stops and he goes, I'm about to make some money. The water, if I'm not mistaken, was 10 rand. I think it was 10 rand. There were different size bottles, but there was a 10 rand one, if I'm not mistaken. So she's like, can you buy me some water? Because she looks like she doesn't have the money for it. She looks like she's about to die. Frankly, she looked like something was about to happen to her. And you have to know, the journey ahead was going to be like hours and hours. It was going to be an all-night journey. And she's already looking like, I don't know, yeah? And she was seated right next to me. So it's me and her together on this seat until morning, And I've said before, I had no money except the bus money for my connecting bus, which was the exact amount of money needed for the cheapest bus. I then said to the lady, okay. I bought the water. I bought the water, gave it to her, wishing I could take a sip first, because I'm dying of thirst right now, wishing I'd brought some tap water. And she was like, oh, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you so much. And she took a sip of it, closed the lid, and like packed it into a handbag. And she's now like sitting there and sleeping or in pain. I have no idea what she was going through. And now I'm sitting there and thinking, right, I looked online and I know that the cheapest bus costs 250 rand. At that time, that was the price. And now I know I have 240 rand. I was already on the fence because there was a possibility that when I get there, the bus was going to be sold out, right? I could have bought my ticket in advance, but I couldn't do that because if, for whatever reason, my bus got delayed, the time margins were too close. It would mean I would miss the bus. And I didn't want to be, I thought I'm better off having the money on me and hoping that my bus doesn't get delayed. And no one buys out the bus. Before I get there, no one buys out the cheapest bus. So I'm sitting there, worried the entire journey. Like the entire night, I'm sitting there thinking, I am 10 rand short. How do I play this? Do I start asking people on the bus for money? Or should I ask now? Should I wait? Should I, this is running through my mind because I don't know what to do. And you have to know that once I got to Zimbabwe, I had another thing on my mind, which was when I get to Zimbabwe, I'm going to need another extra bus to take me home. But then I figured because I'm in Zimbabwe, I can work it out because I'll be in my own country, in my own turf, in my own area. I can knock at the office of a friend or someone and say, dude, sorry to do this to you, but that's how it is. I'm coming from school and students tend to be broke. Yeah, I had options once I'm in my country, not before. So I'm sitting here. Bus gets to the station. The night is over. All is good. We part ways. The lady goes. I go my own way. And I'm now standing in the queue to buy the cheapest ticket for the cheapest bus. I'm standing there with 240 rands, knowing full well that there's a big sign there which says 250. And I'm thinking, should I just go to the teller and say, can you please add me some of your own personal money? And I was thinking, that's what I have to do. That's what I have to do. Because the thing you have to also know is that in these kind of places, in these bus stations, it looks and feels a bit like an airport, but it's not really, In those places, to try and approach anyone and try to talk to them or ask for anything from anyone, in as much as 10 rand isn't really that much money, I don't think you could buy a chocolate for 10 rand, at least not a good one, It wasn't really that much amount of money. But in Shona, they say, Kwana Semaria Basi. Which means even though it's not that much money, it's what's needed for the money to be enough for my ticket, And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, oh, what to do. Then, as it happens, some guy approaches me. Before I talk about what the guy said, let me describe how I was standing. I'm standing there. And there's a bunch of ladies in front of me. These ladies look like the ladies who cross back and forth a lot. They come to South Africa, or rather, since I'm currently in Zimbabwe, they go to South Africa and they buy stuff and then they come back, they sell the items and they kind of do that back and forth. It looked like they were those kind of ladies who cross the border and sell items and go back and forth, That's their business. That's what they do, for a living. And I was standing there and a bunch of those ladies had kind of formed a circle, right? Because the line was a bit long. So all of our bags were on the center and we were kind of circling our luggage so that no one can grab anything and run away with it, So it didn't happen intentionally, but because we're in a queue and people started talking, there was kind of a dome that got formed, a bit like bisons circling their children or the weak ones or whatever animal you can think of, like zebras, huddling together so that their stripes make them look more intimidating to any would-be purse snatchers, So we're now kind of arced together with our luggage at the center, not by design, but kind of it happened, And in that moment, a guy then approaches me. And like I said, you don't want people talking to you in this place because it's common that people get stuff snatched and stabbed or something, It's not a safe place to be. It's a scary place. You have security there, but still stuff happens. And I'm now standing there and the guy approaches me and he goes, dude. And I was thinking, what? Come on. You can't rob me, man. I mean, I've already got the money that's less than the cheapest ticket to go to Zimbabwe. I'm thinking, I didn't say it. I was just thinking it. I turned to the guy and he's like, if you and your friends here can all follow me, I can get you into my bus because my bus needs to go now. But we don't have enough people. So if the group of you can come now, all of you, we can discount 10 rand from your fare to go to Zimbabwe because we need to go, but we are missing enough people, I couldn't believe it. I looked at him and I'm like, what? And it's like, yeah, I'll discount 10 rand. I'm not allowed to give discounts, but I will have to give it to you as just to entice you to go. And you won't have to wait. Because once you agree, we'll get on the bus and we'll go now, And I was thinking, because where we were in a queue to buy a ticket for a bus that was yet to come, right? And remember what I said before, that I couldn't buy my ticket in advance for this particular leg of the journey because there was a risk that if my bus got delayed, I would miss the connecting bus. So this offer was coming from one of the possible connecting buses that I would have been able to connect with if I'd bought my ticket in advance, but I couldn't risk it because the timings were way too close. I think there was only like 30 minutes in between the two connections, and that's not a lot of time when you're traveling the entire night, 30 minutes is something if you're like going to the shops. That's a lot of time. But when you're traveling all night, that's, and I'm thinking, what? And the ladies now heard the guy because they were now also listening and they said, 10 rand. What kind of a discount is that? I mean, we eat 10 rand for breakfast. Now, of course, you can't eat 10 rand because, anyway, you get what I was trying to say. We eat 10 rand for breakfast. That's nothing, You can't if you're going to give us a discount, give us like a proper discount, like 50 rand, maybe, not 10 rand. And I'm thinking, come on. Then the ladies thought, you know what? But since you are leaving now, we agree. Let's go. The guy took us. We went to his bus, got there, and the entire time, I had a sickening feeling in my stomach. I felt sick. Why? Because I thought to myself, man, I spent the entire journey worried. I spent the entire journey upset that why did I sit next to this lady in the bus who wanted me to buy her water? Why did she ask me? The entire night I couldn't sleep because I was just worried. I was sick and I was, And little did I know that God had a plan. Little did I know that things were going to be okay. If only I had the faith. I mean, people who hear this story could possibly go, wow, what a lovely story. Everything worked out. But for me, it doesn't feel like a lovely story because I lacked faith in the whole picture, It would have been a lovely story if I had the faith. If I had spent my night sleeping comfortably, saying to myself, you know what? I'm going to put this in God's hands. Something's going to happen. I don't know what, but I don't know. Something will happen. But nope, I didn't do that. I had to worry. I hope you've enjoyed this story. You are listening to Fighting Together. It's a podcast I kind of give you daily so that you can take yourself out of whatever you're going through, take yourself out of the chaos in the world, and just consume something different. After the break, I have another segment coming up, which will be the last segment. I hope you enjoyed the story. Cheers.
These days, the internet is filled with toxic content, politics, depressing news, and statistics. If you want a bit of refuge from all that chaos, then visit www.dailypodcast.show, where we give you hope, hymns, and something different.
Right. After that story, I think I have given you a wholesome podcast episode. I hope so, because I hope and keep aiming to make this place something different, to make this podcast something that you can look forward to. I want you to sit at home and think, why isn't today's episode up yet? Hopefully, we will get there one day, to that place where this shall become a part of your daily routine. My name is Tafadzwa. You're listening to Fighting Together. For this final segment, for this last bit, I'm going to read a piece of scripture that kind of relates to what I said in my story before. The story I gave you before the break. Yeah, I talked about how I kicked myself at the end of the day and said, oh man, I wish I had had a little bit of faith. I wish I had just kind of slept and rested on the bus and looked out the window and enjoyed the ride. But instead, I spent the entire journey from Durban to Joburg, hours and hours and hours and hours, stressed, worried. I had a headache coming on because I just couldn't bear it to think, what am I going to do? I don't have enough money now. I don't have. Over and over and over again, I just kept thinking the same thought the entire journey. Now, I'll read, like I said, alternating from English, Shona, English, Shona. I haven't done it like that before, because normally I read the entire chapter or the entire reading and then I go to another language. But this time I'll do it differently. I think this is how I'll do it in the future, depending on how it goes out. I'll read in English, one verse, in Shona, one verse, starting now.
You are listening to Fighting Together. We are fighting to make a positive impact in our God-hungry communities.
Get your Bible ready. The next segment has now begun.
Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. So, I tell you, don't worry about the things you need to live, what you will eat, drink, or wear. Life is more important than food, and the body is more important than what you put on. In Shona, verse 25. Naizvozvo, ndinokutaurirai kuti musafunganya nezveupenyu hwenyu, kuti ndichadyei kana kuti muchanwei, kana nezvemuviri kuti muchapfekei. Ko, upenyu hausi hwakakosha here kudarika zvokudya, nomuviri kudarika nguo. 26. Look at the birds. They don't plant, harvest, or save food in barns, but your heavenly Father feeds them. Don't you know? You are worth much more than they are. Tarirai shiri dzinobhururuka, hadzidyari kana kukohwa kana kuisa zvokudya mumatura, asi Baba venyu vari kudenga vanodzipa zvokudya. Imi hamuna kukosha kudzipfuura nokure kwazvo here. You cannot add any time to your life by worrying about it. Ndiani pakati penyu angawedzera awa imwe chete paupenyu hwake nokuda kwekufunganya? 28. And why do you worry about clothes? Look at the wildflowers in their field. See how they grow. They don't work or make clothes for themselves. Ko, munofunganyirei pamusoro pezvokupfeka? Tarirai kuti maruva esango anokura sei, haashandi kana kuruka. 29. But I tell you that even Solomon, the great and rich king, was not dressed as beautifully as one of these flowers. Asi ndinokuudzai kuti kunyangwe Soromoni mukubwinya kwake kwose haana kumboshonga serimwe ramaruva aya. That's the end of today's podcast. Please like the page. In the comments section, I'm going to put a link to the YouTube channel. Go over there and subscribe to make this project move and grow. I hope to have different hosts. I hope to have different shows, animated content, and so much more. Personally, I'm an animator, so the prospect of adding in animated content into the Fighting Together project, it's right there at my fingertips. I'm very excited and can't wait because there's so much to be done. Have a lovely day. My name is Tafadzwa, and I hope you'll be joining me again tomorrow for another episode of Fighting Together. God willing, I'll be able to do another episode tomorrow, and God willing, you'll be there to listen to it.